Hey everyone, welcome to this week's of Women Serve 2. Today we have Amy Maikoski. Is it
Yes.
Maikoski? Did I say it
Yes,
right?
Maikoski. Yes.
Don't say
Yes.
Maikoski. It's Maikoski. All right. I
Yes.
know when you look at this name, you want to say Maikowski. And growing up in the Monsters Inc. era, yes,
Mm,
you want to say it is, but it is Maikoski. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Maikoski. Okay, so we have Amy with us, and she is a certified transformational trainer, facilitator, and speaker, and founder of Be True to Your Best You, with over 2.5 decades of experience empowering thousands of individuals. She walks alongside her clients that feel stuck and overwhelmed, filled with self doubt, and lacking clarity of a way out, to find their voice and give themselves permission to show up consciously with the intent of personal elevation and expansion. I love that. So we're definitely
thank
obviously
you.
going to talk about what you could do, how that it's going to be able to help, military women, as well as female veterans. But let's start talking about your military experience.
I love
Amy,
it.
go ahead, tell us.
Absolutely. So I joined straight out of high school. I was actively involved in getting myself ready for medical school. And in that, I had an internship that I was working in, which I carried over from high school, as well as going to college. And I did all of that being the third oldest of 10 children. So there was not any monetary support from my parents or my family because they were unable to. And that's absolutely fine. I was born a leader. And so I did whatever was necessary to get myself to the goal that I wanted to be. However, after several months of working endless hours and taking extensive amount of courses, physically, emotionally, and mentally, I knew that I was reaching an endpoint. And so I needed to find another option, another opportunity to be able to accomplish that same goal. And I have three generations. I'm a third generation American. So three very loyal, active, military family members that were all men. And I was always kind of a rough and tough gal anyway, and said, you know what? Nobody else of all of my siblings had served, and even talked about being interested in the military. And I always loved listening to the stories of my grandfathers, my uncles, my father, and of my great grandfathers, reading the things that were recorded from them. And so I was like, you know what? Why not? Why the hell not? Why let's do this. And so I went in and found out what my options were and went in medical into the United States Air Force and absolutely had no idea what I was up against. And so again, I was rough and tough and very strong, very athletic. I was in bodybuilding when I joined. And so I figured, yeah, I'll be just fine. Well, a female athletic individual in bodybuilding doesn't always meet the quotas or the guidelines of what a female should weigh or how she should fit her uniforms or any of those things. So I already had an uphill climb.
Mm.
I struggled through basic training mentally, emotionally, and physically. I definitely had some major struggles there, as most of us do, and loved the struggle, loved the challenge, loved the fact that I was going to be something bigger than where I was in my little town in Midwest Michigan. We just small area, small town, small people. And so here I go and loved what I did in the military. I was a medical laboratory technologist when I signed. And so I had two tech schools and went from several bases in Texas to my first duty station in Wright-Patterson, Ohio,
Mm.
which was, again, very, very close to home. So I was elated to even be within a 6-hour drive of home. And loved Wright Patterson because it was Midwestern. It was right. Everything that I knew, the personalities, the area, the weather, all of that great stuff was familiar, which was interesting to me. And so as I was at Wright Patterson, I got selected by a very prominent general to be his right-hand person, because every time that he came into the lab or his wife came into the lab, they were always so impressed, not just in my skills in my MOS, but in the person that I was and how I spoke to people and how my leadership shined. And he was a head of special forces. And so he had troops coming in and going out all the time. So I ended up getting cross trained, or not really cross trained, because I stayed in my laboratory position, but I actually was able to add a certification to that as a combat medic. And so I trained with his troops. I trained right alongside him. And every time that the flight line was filled with an airplane to send people off or to receive them from combat, I was right alongside him. And whether it was last minute blood tests, whether it was things that they needed for out processing, I was the one that got to do it. So that was probably the highlight of my career, was being selected just because of the person that I was.
Mhm.
That was amazing to me. And then from Wright-Patterson, I had a amazing opportunity to follow this general down to MacDill and be a part of the CENTCOM, SOCOM, and Special Forces missions. And so, because that entire effort was transitioning from Wright-Patterson to MacDill, I got to go. And I was I served for about 6 years. And right at my 6 year mark, there was an accident that I was in on the flight line, which damaged my hands terribly. And I have horrible nerve damage. And even to this day, have not been able to revive it, but manage the pain and whatnot that I go through every day proudly, because I know I wouldn't have done it any other way. My ultimate goal was to stay 20 years plus. I did not get that opportunity. So I figured that when I got out as a civilian, that it was all about my brothers and sisters that were either on the civilian side with me or still active. And I've been very involved with them ever since. So that's just a tidbit of what makes me who I am.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It's so cool that he like handpicked you. I mean, when you're handpicked, it's just like a different, like it just shows like who you are, right? Like
Yes.
ambitious, like
Yeah.
motivated, like he clearly saw something in you, and that's just so amazing. So, what like in your military journey, what's an experience that like profoundly impacted your identity or your outlook in life?
Absolutely. So there were a few, not all of them positive. As a medical lab technologist, there are a lot of opportunities to excel, become management over different departments, be able to go do additional services throughout the base, get more visibility, of course, then to rank up and earn different awards and things that everybody wanted. But again, I was just this little old white girl out of Midwest Michigan. There were a number of things that I was passed up for, despite the fact that, like you just said, I have leadership and I show, differently than most. There were a lot of individuals that rode different coattails for whatever reason. And if that was their prerogative, that's great. If, they could look themselves in the mirror and know that that's how they acquired those different things. But for me, I showed up every day. And so there was a lot of frustration because I got passed up for rank advancements and positions and different things like that. So when the general came to me and asked me to do this, there was nothing that could touch it. There was absolutely nothing that could touch it. And the neatest part about it was the first time that I was on the flight line to receive a flight that had come home from overseas. And as we all know, in those years that it wasn't happy. It wasn't celebratory when our brothers and sisters came home. There was a lot that they waited for, 10 to 18 hours, depending on where they were based over there, that when they came home, there were injuries and damages that some of them didn't make it, through the flights. Some of them were missing limbs. Some of them were just in a very traumatic state that they were psychologically unstable. And I was the first one to touch them. And on that flight that day, as I had no idea what to expect. I was very aware because I was trained in combat medic, but that's field stuff. So to be the first person to hear some of the final stories that our brothers and sisters were not ever able to share with their families or with their command is a lot of weight, a lot of responsibility. And I was the last one that got to hold a lot of that. And so being honored and privileged divinely to be put in that position and to be trusted was very, very, very powerful for me. And so that very first flight was very eye-opening.
Yeah.
um, it wasn't a significantly large quantity of people, but it didn't matter. Each one of their journeys and their service and their dedication to freedom just made everything inside of me ignite more than ever, because now it was very personal.
Wow. Um, so to put it in context, what years did you serve?
Absolutely. So I joined in 93 and I got out in 99. So we were Gulf War conflict during that time, and a number of other not publicly announced missions that
Yep.
we were very much a part of during that time. And so it feels like it was yesterday.
I feel like that's so true because like I've been out for like probably about 7 years now, and like my airman days literally feel like they were just yesterday.
Yes.
And it's
Yes.
crazy how like the military, like your military service, like it just it just sticks with you.
Yeah.
Like time could go past, but it literally will feel like yesterday. And like the
So true.
connections, and like even
Yes.
the connections too. Like some of my
Mhm.
best friends are from my first duty station. It's just a different, mindset and mentality when, there's a very small group of you and then you just kind of ride or die from your
Absolutely.
experiences. So you dealt with like a lot of experiences, especially with, bringing people home. And, I wanted to tear up because I know how hard that is. So how did you kind of deal with that emotionally? Because that's really heavy stuff.
Absolutely. And I, in the moment, I want to say that the adrenaline really handled it more than anything. My focus at that time was being of service to those that were overseas where I didn't go. I stayed stateside the entire time I was here. But the mission and the job for what I was doing to me was just as important. And so the adrenaline that I went through and the focus of the passion of why I was there, and my love and my commitment for why I was there in uniform, I really truly believe was the only thing that held me together. And my obligation to the general, knowing that he trusted me to hold that space, to be able to triage and go, okay, this person's here, this is where we're at here. And handling all of that so that he didn't have to was powerful. And even all of his support staff that were there just always would come over to me and, Aim, are you okay? Never, it was always my first name. It was never my rank. It was just too intimate of a situation that we didn't worry about the formalities of things in that moment. But all of the support staff and even the enlisted individuals that were the higher ranking would come over to me and go, God, girl, I don't know how you do this. And would say that. And honestly, I didn't even think about it. I didn't even take the time to go, what about me in those moments? Because it was so much bigger than who I was.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I know at the time your adrenaline was rushing. As a caretaker, as like, a leader, you're handling the situation right at that moment. But once it passed, like time kind of passed, like how did that affect you? Like did it kind of
Absolutely.
creep up,
Yeah.
and how were you able to, keep pushing forward?
Absolutely. So what I would refer to is that common term that all of us know, that PTSD. Um, Trauma is a very powerful thing. And each one of us as human beings and the experiences that we go through in life fall into that trauma space. And I can tell you that certainly there are noises that I hear that take me back to those combat training moments where I might as well have been overseas. We were not train, everybody goes, oh, well, you're Air Force. Chair Force. No, no, no. And I'm like, yeah, but no. What you don't understand is every mission I was ever on was joint commissioned. There, all four branches were there. I didn't ever get the experience of being whatever the joke or the comedy is, that everybody thinks that
Yeah.
Air Force is so much easier than everybody else. And not to compare, because everyone's experience is what they are. I can definitely tell you that there have been experiences since I got out, certain smells that remind me of the smell of burning flesh, which is a horrific smell. And it's not something you ever forget. There are certain movies, that I have watched that will totally paralyze me and silence me in the moment, because it is very emotionally connected to what I've experienced. And I have done a lot of therapy on myself, which I now have implemented into many of my clients that we will talk about, that talks about the power of the brain. And despite the fact that we have experienced the things that we have, it doesn't define who we are. And that was probably one of the most empowering moments that I realized that I could be the creator for, that I was not required to be limited by those experiences, to not ever to be bigger or better or different than those emotions. And so it has been a long journey. I get it that it's 2024, but like I said to you, it feels like it was just yesterday. So it doesn't feel like it's been 24 years since I've been out, because all it takes is one twitch, one ignition, one spark, and I am right back in that very moment. But I'm definitely approaching it and handling it differently because of the personal work that I've done and the work that I've done for others, because it just continues the understanding of the capabilities that we have in this amazing human body and brain that we each get to exist in while we're here. So
Yeah, that's so powerful because I think a lot of people, especially like like the civilians and even some military too, when they think like PTSD, like it's, you're traumatized forever
yeah.
and or say like 22 years, you're like, well, why do you still have it? Well, and I get that a lot. Like a lot of people have this like stigma around what PTSD should be.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was also diagnosed with it. I was intel. So, I mean,
Yes.
I was also Air Force, even though I never deployed. I was, deployed at station, quote, quote.
Yes.
So, although I wasn't, face to face like you were, like there were certain things that I did see. And, and you're right. Like I've been out for a little bit, but like there's like little things that'll trigger it. Like I'm fine now, but it's just, yeah, there's like certain little things like when the Las Vegas shooting happened a couple years
Mm.
ago, that re-triggered mine because
Yeah.
I was like, these fucking terrorists did it. Like they finally did it and it just hit home. And
Yes.
then so like it re-triggered all of these emotions.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people think like I said, they have the stigma on what PTSD should be, but you do kind of have to work through it and figure out like, what works for you. And
Exactly.
it doesn't matter how long it's been. I mean, my grandpa's a Vietnam vet and like he would still have nightmares and stuff. And
Yeah.
that was what, 50 years ago, 50,
Oh
60 years
yeah.
ago? Like,
Yes.
so it doesn't go away. It may be, you know, better. You could work through it so you could handle it better. But
Right.
there are times and like certain movies, like you said, or certain smells that would just re-trigger that. So I would love to
Yes.
dive into the whole brain stuff with you in just a moment, but I want to keep talking about this amazing military experience that you had
Yes.
because I'm like
Yes. Of
so
course.
intrigued. Like you're handpicked by a general,
Yeah.
like you're seeing shit that a lot of people like only
Never.
honestly watch in the movies.
Yeah.
Like, and and I get because being Air Force, hearing the whole chair force thing, but when you're in a joint environment, it's different. And a lot of people
So
don't
different.
have, those experiences in that joint area. But as a woman,
Yes.
Those women serve too. I do want to highlight, the obstacles that women face. What were some unique obstacles that you encountered, as a woman in the military, and like what strategies or mindsets like kind of helped you overcome those obstacles?
Absolutely. So, as a woman, again, I was the first woman in my family. So, that already was my focus and my intention to show up. And as women, we have very different tools and skill sets that we offer to situations. So, our insight is different, our conviction is different, how we handle things is different. And even our organization. I mean, that's the divine abilities for what we have in this makeup that we live within. And so I would find very much so in the beginning of my military career that I really had to eliminate trying to prove to the world that I was a woman doing what I was doing, that I needed to subdue the approval or acceptance that I was a woman and just simply show up with what I knew I had deep down inside of me. And the ladies that I were around that were unable to switch that perspective definitely had a harder time than I did. And I'm very grateful that I was kind of a tomboy and a roughneck growing up because I already had to kind of step into those shoes. And so most of my time as a woman, I would find that the gentleman, because I wasn't super feminine and super frou frou, and I didn't, care about my nails, and I could care less about, the very feminine side of things. I was just there to do my job, that they would quietly come to me and ask me to get things done.
Mm.
And because I didn't ask for the pomp and circumstance, of look at me, I'm a lady kind of thing. And that for me probably was a bigger reason why I was able to push through a lot of the stuff that I was given, because of that method of changing things and switching things as to where my focus was. And so I definitely had many, many moments, however, where the emotional side, the empathic side of me was overwhelming. And I had to remove myself, step away, gain my composure, and then come back with that perception that I knew was required for completing a mission.
Mm.
And so I can say that in the nature and nurture side of it, that I had to earn my space because of the fact that I was a woman and in the medical field. And so, it was always the taunting, the mocking, you at that point, we actually wore dresses. That was in the hospital. When we were at the hospital, we were not in our combat gear. We were in formal white dresses as ladies, and the gentlemen wore pants. And so that made it really, really difficult. I actually got excited after a while being in the combat medic side because I got to wear my BDUs. And I was like, this is kind of why I wanted to be in here. But we didn't get to do that on a daily basis. And I really wasn't a dress wearer. So mentally, each day I had to remind myself in the mirror who I was, how I'm showing up, and that even though on the outside, my required uniform didn't make me feel that way, that I had to overcome that and show up with what I knew I brought to the table. And so there were definitely a number of elements in what we did that made me feel subpar, and I just continually had to show up. And I believe that's where my leadership continued to evolve and grow, because of that resiliency and just having to grab myself by my bootstraps and not let those things get in my way. But I can certainly say my female strengths carried me through where a lot of the gentlemen that I worked with crumbled, where they didn't have the wherewithal. They didn't have the resiliency deep within because they didn't have to. Shit got done for them. And so that's where I am really grateful as a woman, and watching the female leaders that are continuing to climb the ladder to show up in their feminine but still in their leadership. And that, to me, as I continue to watch and be very actively involved, in the community, I love it. I celebrate it. I bring light to it. It's stellar. I don't feel that we have to necessarily fight our way up, because our divine creation already gives us those gifts that the guys don't get.
Mhm. So I have almost like a controversial question. Just
Yeah, by all means, let's go.
yeah, okay. So I was scrolling on social media. Actually, I think it was on YouTube.
Uh-huh.
And there was this guy that said women should not be in combat roles.
Fair.
So he was saying that women are too emotional, and that we would lock up and not be able to handle what was in front of us, kind of like, unlike you were able to. And
Yeah.
he also said that if men and women were in a combat zone together, the men's quote quote DNA is to protect the woman, and not, that would be the first instinct, is to protect the woman that he's with instead of taking care of the mission. Now, in your opinion, what do you think about that?
Absolutely. I've got a couple opinions on that. So, first and foremost, for him to feel that way very clearly, he has his own perception of what women are and what we're capable of based on his own experience. He does not know those of us that do what we do in our given day and do it successfully and usually excel beyond even what the men do. So, understanding that when people speak, usually they're speaking to their own insecurities, and it's only a mirror of themselves. And so when daggers come out and judgment comes out, it only simply shows what his personal experience is. That's all that it does. So I kind of shake that stuff off like a water off a duck's back. However, when it comes to the DNA, yes, men are all about survival, which is why they can't emotionally handle things. And in an intense situation like a war zone, emotion is required for grit and resilience to push through some of these things, because survival is taken from many of our brothers and sisters that have been over there. I mean, when you're got a gaping wound in your gut and it's a no matter what, I'm going to push through this, because we have the experience deep within to do more than simple survival. As women, we are required and should be overseas. And definitely, as the tours have happened and the missions have happened, they see the power in. That's why they opened the door to the Navy SEALs and to all the special forces to let women in, because they realized the value in the big picture of what we do offer, in the balance and the harmony that it allows in the mental side of it. That when we're over there, it's not a matter of needing to be protected. If I'm over there with you, I've got the same training and I crossed the same lines and I earned the same accruities that are required for me to be sitting next to you. And so what I focus on very much so when people like that get their spotlight on, social media or whatever the case be, is let's focus on the facts and let's remove the emotion from it. Because yes, we are emotional beings, but let's look at what truly has had to occur to get women in the field, in special forces, showing up as pilots, as leaders, as generals, as all of these positions, that if we didn't earn it, we wouldn't be there. It wasn't just because somebody felt bad for us. So I'm going to call bullshit on that.
I mean, I agree,
Yeah.
but you have that combat experience where
Yeah.
I just wanted to see what your opinion was on that whole take, because, one thing, another comment that I hear about too is like the PT standards, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you're the bodybuilder, so like you were probably able to push a lot of, some of those PT limits for probably even against some of the men, like do better than some of the men. And so one of the things that I hear is like, well, women should meet the same PT standards as men if they want to be in combat.
Fair. Okay. So what I'm going to say to that one is that the PT standards that were actually created were done based on scientific anatomical studies of how each of our bodies are made. So when somebody says, well, yours is different than mine, again, it's only an insecurity on their part. If they really cared enough about who gets put next to them in the foxhole, they would realize that in that capability of what we can offer, we're not meant to do the pull-ups. Women aren't, we don't have the muscle makeup to do those pull-ups. Are there women that can do it? Yes, of course. But it doesn't mean that we were made to do that. Where men, you are created again as a survivor, as the protector, as the provider. And so they have to have that because that's the nature of what their purpose is. And so when it comes down to being able to hold a gun, I'm pretty sure that 70% of women are marksmen over men who have to work to earn the key. So are you worried about whether I can carry you or whether I can shoot the enemy that's coming towards you to protect your ass? Let's go. Let's really, again, put the facts on the table versus the emotion or the interpretation because of someone's experience or perception of what another individual can do. Take ownership of ourselves. Know that if we choose to be over there, we're going to do whatever it takes to be trained, to be certified, and to be totally capable of the mission at hand. Otherwise, we wouldn't go through those motions.
Oh my God, preach. Like I think that was like just so spot on, right? Like we wouldn't put ourselves in a situation where we felt like we couldn't do it, that we wouldn't be willing to do it.
Right.
And it's also that mind shift change too. Like, like you said, is it about carrying me? Like, I'm sure that adrenaline will probably come
If I
through,
had to, yes.
right? Like, they always say that the mama adrenaline, like if your kid is stuck under a car, the mom's adrenaline could like lift up like 5 cars, or I don't know what that quote is, but like that
Yes.
mom adrenaline. So one, that I could see that happening. Like if
Yes.
I'm in a shit situation and I need to carry your ass, like bet like and I'm getting shot at, my adrenaline is going through the roof and it's gonna help me survive. But you're right,
Absolutely.
like let's care about the different things like can I shoot, or how is my situational awareness, the mindset, like shifting what someone can do compared to like, let's just shift that mindset. All right, let's focus on what they can do.
And shift our acceptance of one another. Instead of comparing, know that that person next to you had to go through the same exact requirements to get to where they're at. And if they're there because they want to be. Because there's a number of people that don't volunteer. There's a number of people that don't have the grit inside of them to even be brave enough and courageous enough to say, wow, yeah, I want to put myself through all of that to go and put my life on the line next to somebody that's going to sit next to me and go, oh, well, you're a woman. Listen, we don't have time for that. And that time, it's about the mission. It's about what we're there to do and about the freedom that we're there fighting for. And anything outside of that shouldn't be given any attention or any energy anyway. So if those people are in that state of mind, I'll just know that that's not who I want to be next to and carry on.
I like could already tell I wish you were like my leader. Like I just like you're such a badass. I love it. And
Thank you.
you're so involved with the community as well. So once you got out, I know you said you had I'm assuming medically discharged because
Yes.
of the accident, but
Yes.
you're still involved with the community. How are you involved with the community?
Absolutely. So I very actively involved just through my own company that I do, which is a neuro transformational ecosystem of helping people to shift where they've been into where they want to get to. The simplest way to put it. But I am very actively involved with my veterans through the VA. I do events at my local grunt style stores And we actually do events after the store close and welcome people in. And it's specifically about connection and networking. You know, what support do you need? Where can we help you plug in? Do you know the resources and tools available to you? And the owners of the stores are amazing. They're extremely supportive in my local area. And so knowing that those things happen there, I also have a gentleman that has a homeless shelter specifically geared to veterans that I go over and serve at. I usually will bring over individuals that will do a day of self-care. So individuals that are willing to simply listen to stories. As human beings, some of our greatest needs are to be heard, to be seen, to be celebrated, and to be loved. And so if we can offer that to individuals that don't feel that that's happening, that they feel all of those things are the exact opposite in society, it gives them the wherewithal to want to still exist, to still be involved. And so we do that. We do haircuts. We do whatever we need to help clean them up, give them self-care kits, help them pick some new clothes, even though, you know, they're consignment, but it's newer than what they've got. Some fresh socks, you know, a bag of granola bars and maybe a solar blanket or a couple dollars here or there. Nothing that certainly, you know, is by any means financially helpful, but we are that voice for them. We are that transition for them. And so however I can do that, and as I hear of things happening, and the funny thing is that wherever I go, whether it's a restaurant, a bar for drinks, out on the golf course, wherever I'm at, it never fails that there is this vibrational connection with other military members. And so a lot of opportunities get dropped in my lap that I am really excited about, that people trust me enough to include me in. And my ultimate goal in what I'm doing, which will be the legacy that I lead, that there will be mobile self-care units that will travel through the United States for all of our brothers and sisters that choose to be homeless. Not all of them get thrown out on the street. Many of them choose to be homeless because they don't want to be involved in society. They do not want to be on the radar. They do not want to be, you know, a part of what is out there for them. And I believe that if that's the choice that they make, or if that's the circumstances that they're in, that as long as they know where those tools are for them and they know that somebody gives two shits about them, that life would be different for them. And so creating those mobile units to be able to go to cities, you know, near the bases that still exist or used to exist, and spending 2 and 3 days there to provide home cooked food and clothes and a haircut and a shower and whatever it is, to just make them stand a little bit taller with their shoulders back again and feel seen. And that will ultimately be what I will make sure gets left behind when I leave this existence, because I know as a veteran how many individuals I meet that don't have that, and that all they would care is that somebody would genuinely listen to the stories that they have, because so many of them don't even want to share because their families tell them, you know, it's too much, we don't want to talk about it, or it's too hard for them to talk about it because the fear totally paralyzes them from wanting to have to experience and feel it all over again. And so I really believe that that initiative is so important, to be able to give those individuals that time and attention.
Wow, that is so powerful. I honestly didn't know a lot of them chose to be homeless.
Yeah. Well, they feel that they've been betrayed by their government
Mm,
because nothing is offered to them. You know, they don't get a say. They don't, other people from outside of the United States that aren't even citizens get more freedoms than our veterans do. And that's a really sad place to be, knowing that we wouldn't have the freedom without the service that was done. And not here to even stand on a political table, simply looking at the facts, the people that I get to hear the stories from. And again, they're their stories, whether they're based on fact or whether it's something they created, it's still theirs, and they still deserve to be seen and to be celebrated for what they've offered for each and every one of us.
I know with like a lot of veterans, they don't know the resources and the services that are available to them. And
Yes.
since you do work with, like the VA and telling people what is available to them, what do you see is the most common thing that veterans, what resource is the most common thing that they are not aware of that they have access to?
Absolutely. So many of them actually cling to the VAs and they go to the VAs and are misinformed because of the fact that it's very hard to keep employees at the VA. Many of them are volunteers because of the hard work that it is. There are so many veterans that come in, and unfortunately, the training isn't there. So they will go there and ask for a physical or ask for something and not realize that they do really get the right to do it if you've served based on a new decision. But again, not everybody is informed properly. So I would say, really refining that system, being able to do a better job in training those that are at the doors of the VAs so that there is a resource officer or a database that individuals can go into to go, this is what I need. Is that open to me? Is that possible to me? This is my social security number. What do I have access to? That process is very spotty based on all of the individuals that I've come across. Depends on where they live. Certain VAs are better than other VAs. And just being consistent there. I think putting the money and the time and the energy into a more informed program so that they do know what's possible. And not everybody gets full care. I get that. There's only so much we can do when you actually look at the number of veterans that have served to be able to provide care and support for all of them. It's not a focus for the government. I hate to say that, but it's simply not on the forte list. And so as we get into those things, I would say possibly refining that would really be the best key as to what's available. The suicide lines, the therapy lines, the groups even that meet together that a lot of people are unaware of. It's almost like an AA meeting, but there are PTSD meetings that are very, very prevalent because there are those that need it. And they know that there are many brothers and sisters of ours that do not have that at their reach or that they're even aware of. And so I would say just refining that. I try really hard not getting too big in the picture because I don't have control over the big. I have control over me. So where and how in my space can I be more committed and more dedicated to, first of all, awareness of hearing some of those statements that get made or some of those words or those terms that are used by a veteran or an active duty member that wouldn't just come out of an average Joe Blow's mouth, and then connecting with them and going, hey, I'm with you. I'm there with you. I served as well. I know that our experiences are different. However, I want to support you in any way that I can. What is it that you're struggling on? And just being mindful of each other, being aware of one another, I think would make a significant difference in this space because it's very easy to get stuck and concentrated in our own journey and the things that we're deprived of and the things that we need. And instead of taking our blinders down and going, wait a minute, there's lots of me's out there. And how can I maybe be that leader outside of my service and show up differently to those that are in need? And it doesn't mean we all have the answers, but we all have computers and we all have smartphones. And if we heard that there was a situation, we have the ability to do some very simple research to find out where those resources are. So bigger picture, yes, I would love for them to advertise clearer, cleaner, so that those hubs, those VAs, those areas, usually where the bases are, people can go searching in the right place and get the right answers, as well as us as fellow veterans and family members of military. People don't realize that as wives and husbands of a military member, they're just as deep as those of us that served because they had to hold up the house behind. They had to support when we came home after the trials, the tribulations, the trainings that we went through. that emotional support usually ends up in dissolved relationships because it is so much to carry. But there are spouses that get it. And so creating whatever that team needs to be, creating whatever that resource needs to be locally would make a huge difference. That ripple could turn into a tsunami if people cared a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. So I know you also in your business you work with like a lot of clients and the neuro transformation, which I'm
Yes.
very intrigued on. What does that mean and how do you use your business to help other people?
Absolutely. So I don't just simply work with military. They are definitely my focus because I understand that journey implicitly. But what the neurotransformational ecosystem that I've created did not exist before, because otherwise I would have simply plugged into it and not had to make it. All of the elements that I work on is a very holistic platform in who we are and how we show up as human beings. And so every focus that I have is about going from the external world, which is those experiences, what we were taught as children, the things that we've been through, the approval of society, what's expected of us, our religious beliefs, all of these things that were given to us fill up our arms and we can't carry anything more. And until we can unpack the things that are not aligned with what our virtues and values and passions are, then we can't make room for the things that we really want. So, being able to dive inward and removing that external world and going into the inside of learning what it is that you want. Some people, you would ask them, what is it that you really want in life? They go, huh? What do you mean? I actually get to think about that. I actually get to choose that instead of it being handed to me. So I take people from that external space into an inner living space and teach them how to simplify all of that overwhelm that is nothing but chaos and bring them into a space of, wow, that's what I want in life. That's what I desire, and help them through asking questions of digging a little bit deeper to find where their resistances are, why they feel the way that they do, who handed that to them, and why do they think that that's the only thing, the only ability that they have is to take it instead of create it, and move forward as their creator of their immaculate reality, because it's a very powerful place to be. And what's even more important, that when we look inward and we become a whole being instead of pieces of something that everybody else has given to us, we end up in an overflow state. And then our overflow then can feed and be given to the people around us. So relationships change, communications change, how we show up as a leader changes, our professional successes change. All of these things change when we look inward. When we look outward, we're busy blaming everybody for why we don't have what we think we're supposed to. And so
That
we remove that.
that is so amazing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I probably need to work with you
Yeah.
because it is like trying to, answer those tough questions because unless someone's asking you those questions, sometimes you don't think about asking yourself those questions. And
No,
so it's
because we go in automatic every day. As
yeah.
human beings, 70% of us, actually probably closer to 80% of us, go through the day checking the boxes.
Mhm.
Check, 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 check. I'm a mom, get the kids up, get them out the door, go to work, do everything that I need to do at work, wipe everyone's ass and feed them, and then come home and do it at home too. I get it. Like, I was in the executive world when I left the military for many, many years. I held top executive positions. I held management positions. I ran my own businesses and know exactly what it is that we struggle with as women, specifically trying to heal the world,
Mhm.
carrying the world on our shoulders. And until we can identify that we can't go from empty and we have to understand what our own desires and passions are, it's never going to stop. it will just continue in that mediocrity because we're not giving it any other direction. Change doesn't happen until we change. We
Mm,
can't just continue being in that automatic state because we won't get anything different out of it.
I agree. I agree. And I know like a lot of people think it's like they want everything to be instant. They want that instant
Yeah.
gratification. So how long do you usually work with your clients until they have like that self-realization or that shift in change?
Absolutely. So that's a great question, an amazing question, Brittany. The brain is very, very powerful. And when our brain is given the proper direction, there can be immediate changes that people feel. So even after a 30-minute session with me, people go, "Oh my gosh, that makes total sense. Everything's wide open. I can move forward now." And yes, we might have resolved that one issue, but we are multifaceted beings. There's a lot of elements that make us who we are. So we can have immediate wins right away. However, when you're looking at transitioning an entire lifetime, you have to figure out how long you've already been doing it. So, in order to undo and overcome some of those beliefs and those paradigms that limit us from the people that we can ultimately be most authentic to our divine creation, that usually takes no less than a 90-day period.
Mm,
90 days, though, is pretty powerful when you look at it. When you go, wow, only 90 days and I can get significant results. The majority of my clients within 90 days have earned and learned the ability to stand stronger on their own 2 feet than they ever have before. Does it mean that that's the end all do all? No, it simply means that they at least have the systems and the exercises that they need, that as things arise, they know how to cope with it. Now, certainly as they continue to move on, many of my clients will come back around and go, okay, now I need to go deeper. Now that
mm,
I feel that I can do this on my own and I've done it for this length of time, I want to go deeper. I want to understand more. I want to have more capacity to really hit those deeper, darker things that nobody wants to talk about. But
mm,
once we've given ourselves evidence to show that with a few subtle shifts that we get these substantial and significant successes, then we go, well, shit, if I can do that, there's nothing I can't do, because you
mm.
stack the evidence and prove it to yourself that, yeah, this is possible. This is doable. Just like the 4-minute mile. Nobody knew a human being could run a mile in under 4 minutes until it was done.
Yeah, so
So
crazy.
as humans, we see that, we get that evidence, and then we have this enlightenment of, well, if they can do it, I can certainly do it. Then there's that competition and that drive and that challenge within. And honestly, that's what I'm hoping for all of humanity, is that people start seeing the possibilities that are limitless and the potential that is endless in our existence, so that they can tap into it and go, how do I do that? Wait a minute, that's possible. These people are doing this. How do I do it?
Mhm.
That's what I want to go hybrid in the world. That's what needs to be contagious.
Mm. I honestly, everything you're saying, I'm just like completely agreeing with. Like, I
Thank
love
you.
it. And especially like that deep work and knowing that you could do it. I was reading this book where it was saying that if you tell yourself it was about learning strategies because I'm going back to
Okay.
school, but it was like if you tell yourself that you're not going to do good on a test, you're not going to do good. But you have to tell your mind, like, I am capable of learning this. I am capable of doing good. And you're already like the shift in your mind.
Yes.
It
Yes.
like it does something to your learning style.
Yes.
And so like that deep
Absolutely.
work, I
Well,
completely agree.
it's beautiful because that's what athletes do. That's what all the professional athletes do. They have to envision themselves actually doing it before they do it. And
Hmm.
any one of us can do that for whatever accomplishment that we're seeking for. And not only is it a mindset, but what people don't understand is that when your mind gets something that either you've visualized or you've projected in front of it, it doesn't have the ability to discern as to whether it really happened or whether you're just wanting it to happen. What's going to get the most attention is what ignites you deep within. Where does the emotion come from? And if you want something bad enough, you'll get it because of that purpose. And then when your brain feels the emotion that's attached to it, there are endorphins that are released. So not only is it a mindset, but then it physically impacts you. It physically gives you the drive to push through. It physically ignites the chemicals inside of your body to have the capability to enjoy what it is that you've forecasted for yourself. And that's the beautiful feeling. I can't wait to not only, I work with children as well in emotional intelligence and empowerment. And when you give a child that first visualization where they close their eyes and walk through a story and realize the power that they have within themselves to be in control of their own environment. Oh my Lord, I wish as a child that that would have been given to me, that that's available. And now we have these amazing virtual reality things and all of this great stuff that can complement and get that out there on such a bigger level, because when we know what we have possible, we're unstoppable.
That's a beautiful quote. I love that. So with your clients, you work one-on-one? Do you have group? Like how do you work with your clients?
Absolutely. So because of COVID, of course, I was forced into that space of being able to do things digitally. I also have a worldwide audience. And so many of the individuals that I work with are in Europe and Australia, and I've got a couple in China. And so there's smaller groups that I work with. We try to keep it very, very intimate because connection is very important, as well as proper attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do small groups. I am on Facebook and on LinkedIn, and I do sometimes offer live courses on the computer where people can log into my Zoom and learn cute little tweaks and treats of what they can do to get these subtle shifts. I am expanding as much as possible. I am a solopreneur, so much of my work is done by myself, but there are communities that I connect to, that I get put on panels with, and different activities and retreats and conferences with, so that we can make sure that element of transformation exists in these spaces. I speak, I'm a public speaker. So I go into companies, I go into organizations, I go into groups, and depending on where their need is, helping them to focus on what those shifts will be, again, to be seen, to be heard, to be understood and celebrated, and then to be empowered and be given something that doesn't just fix them for a moment, but that they can implement for the rest of their existence. And so, and then I do one-on-one executive coaching. So most of my one-on-one clients are usually 6 months, just because of the deep work that we do. But there's very little that I haven't touched in the 20 plus years of being a coach. The last 11 years of my existence has really been focused on the side of the brain and the empowerment and the tools and the living inward. And so many people, whatever their need is, once I do a consult call with them, it helps me to identify how it is that we need to come up to an event to match what their desired outcome is. And so it just all depends. It's a whole lot of fun. My website is my name, www.amymaikoski.com. And there's so much information on there of what I've done in the community, what I'm still doing in the community, the little tools that I have been on this podcast, I will put on there so that we can make sure that women serve too get the spotlight that they deserve to be heard and supported. And just simply putting out there, but I offer free consult calls. Probably my greatest tool that is the beginning point, the starting point for everybody that I work with, is called a personal mapping. And what we do is pretty much figure out who you are and where you're at and what those desires are, so that we know what those next steps are. And it's a beautiful thing. It's very, very empowering. And I get some of the ravest reviews back from just asking the right questions and walking alongside them and giving a space of unconditional acceptance and support for individuals to feel like they matter and showing up in the world in that best way. And so, definitely any of those tools, there's a whole lot that I do. And there really isn't anything that I'm limited to. I know that there's one trick ponies out there that are like, yeah, I do this and this is all I do. I'm a very, very multifaceted individual with immense experience, and I don't take no for an answer. Everything is possible. And I'm willing to show that and prove that and give that to those individuals that are truly concerned about humanity and wanting something different for the people that they're encircled by. So however I can support, by all means, reach out, let me know, and let's do this.
Yeah, I love your mission. I think that is just truly beautiful and powerful and amazing in so many ways. And I've genuinely and truly loved this conversation. So if
Thank
anyone is
you.
listening, please head to her website. She is clearly an amazing woman, has so many great experiences. She already gave you her website, which I'll also add in the show notes. But how else can people find you?
Absolutely. So I am on Facebook and I am on LinkedIn underneath my name. Nothing special. I do have my Be True to Your Best You community that's also out there as well. But it's very easy. I don't believe that it should be difficult to find the answers that we have, because everything that we need, everything that's required for our greatest existence is already a part of us. All we have to do is tap back into it. And so I try to keep it very simple. AmyMaikoski.com, AMIMAIKOSKI.com, and the same on LinkedIn and Facebook. And I'm just ready to help each and every individual that's willing to do the work unleash their most amazing existence.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for joining today's episode. I appreciate you so much. Again, people, please reach out to her. This woman is phenomenal, and I'm sure that you could transform inside and empower yourself to be all that you can be. So,
Yes.
Amy, thank you so much. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. If you guys have any questions, please reach out to either one of us. Until next week, we will talk to you soon.